So the topic, celebrating the order, that we've been doing all this week. Actually, it sounds a bit funny. It sounds like I've got a rasp in my voice. Does that come across? You can hear me better like this. Okay, great. What I'd like to do, I've got two things I want to talk about. They both come out of the first piece of work I did with Parami last year, which was on the commonality paper. And the amended proposal that we put out began with two guiding principles, which were Samyak Drishti and Kalyana Mitrata. And I thought they were so good. It was so good to be that clear and that essential that I thought I'd like to say a bit more about my own developing understanding of why I think those two principles are really, really important and worth celebrating in our order. I think that one of the reasons I've been dwelling on them is because I've been involved in quite a lot of debate about insight going on in the order in this last year, particularly in relation to direct pointing, but not only that. So that's what I'd like to do. It's quite simple structure in a way. I'd like to begin by celebrating the order in a not an abstract way, because coming here was a chance for me to catch up with two very dear friends, and I just wanted to rejoice in them a little bit. That is Vadika and Amogaratna. So Vadika and Amogaratna. When I moved to Padmaloka, which was in March 1999, I moved there because Vadika had spotted something in me and thought it might be, I might fit in at Padmaloka. And specifically I moved there because Amogaratna was planning to come to Germany, and he was the gardener, and it meant I could take over his job. And that's what happened. Although I stayed at Padmaloka for more than a dozen years, the first 4 years at least I was the gardener there, which was one of the best jobs you can have. Isn't that right? So, but when I arrived, in fact, I met Amogaratna's shrine before I met Amogaratna, because I first started gardening there in 1997 in the summer, and Amogaratna was being ordained, and I didn't meet him. I just filled in as gardener for a few months, and I remember going into, I used to stay overnight. I used to garden 2 days a week and stay overnight, and I would stay in your room. You probably don't know this. And it was the first, it's just an amazing shrine. I remember it being very green. I remember it being covered in money. I remember that in particular because this is a bit humiliating, but I thought, oh, I could take some of the money. I don't know why I thought that. It was like the thought you're not supposed to have, but you can't help having. Anyway, I didn't take any. But by the time I moved there in 99, Amogaratna was already planning to leave. Vadika reminded me this morning that he was getting up, Amogaratna this is, I was getting up at 5:30 to learn German grammar, because he didn't know any German at all. He was also doing classes, I remember this, doing classes in Norwich to try and learn. And also, you had no educational background, did you? You left school at 14 or 15. Left school at... Yeah. No, but you left school, I remember, the thing is, yeah, it's my myth, if you like, of who you are, so don't interrupt. No, you'd left school at 15 and you were working on like building roads. That's what I remember you telling me, building and repairing roads. But what had happened was, well, partly finding the Dharma and then being inspired to go to Germany. I think to help heal a traumatized nation was, you described it to me in something like that. And I found that very inspiring, that someone would go and do something like this, go and live in another culture, learn the language from scratch. And it's one thing having that enthusiasm, and it's another thing seeing it through. So here am I visiting, Berlin, and Amoghratna's still here, chair of the centre, and so on. And it's been lovely catching up with him over the years, back at Padmaloka, on chairs assemblies in different places. Really lovely. And then there's Vadika, who Vadika was just preparing to get ordained when I was there. And I found I had a lot of the same interests as Vadika. We talked about things in the same kind of way, politics, culture, sport. And I remember just feeling like I'd really met someone more like an older brother. Vadika reminded me, but there's a talk that he gave that has always stood out for me. It's one of the best talks I've ever heard to this day. And it was him, about Amogha Siddhi, but it was him describing a sort of a myth of his, which was all about the north. It was about the Green Knight, as of knight on a horse, not time of day. It was about the forest. It was about snow. It was like a mythic landscape. I mean, the sort of landscape that was evoked the other night by the Nordic region, actually, in doing that puja. And again, like Amoghratna, he went and followed that myth. He moved to Tallinn, and he's been there 10 years this year to help establish the Dharma. And I kept in touch with him. I still haven't been to visit him in Tallinn, but I see him every year. And I find it deeply inspiring. I think for both of them as well, especially for Vadika, they went and did this. Vadika was 56 when he left for Tallinn. And that's a time of life when in normal society, a lot of people have got one eye on retirement and, being comfortable and so on. So I remember an academic friend of mine who used to come and stay at Padmaloka, talking about Amoghratna and Vadika specifically, but something he really found inspiring in our order is that people in their 50s and 60s were still incredibly creative in their lives. He drew a parallel. He said there were one or two academics that he felt a similar kind of creativity, but most people he worked with, they would do their best work in their 20s, and then they would just provide a commentary on it for the rest of their academic careers. That was how he described it. I mean, it might be a bit of an exaggeration, but he said that's what he often would come across, and he found the order an environment where people, in a way, seemed to get more creative, and that was inspiring to him, and it's inspiring to me as well. So anyway, those two. I mean, there's other people here. And one of the things about living at Padmaloka is that I got to know so many people. I mean, mostly men, although it was lovely when we started hosting the women's order weekends at Padmaloka. And I got to know Parami, for example, during those weekends. And then being part of things like the Chairs Assembly later on, where I got to know Sadakara and Basika and Jnana Chandra. But at Padmaloka, like when I look around here, almost all the men here I met at Padmaloka. So, some of them, many times. There's only, Arthur Kusalan, I can't remember where I met you, but might not have been at Padmaloka, and Sila Mani, I haven't met before. But in a way, Sila Mani is an example of something to rejoice in, and that is there will in the future be more regional ordination processes, and people won't need to come to Padmaloka or Tiratnaloka. So in a way, that's something to celebrate. But I just want to acknowledge me living there was fantastic, a great introduction to the order. And I kind of made it my business to get to know order members. And it's a delight and a privilege now to be the order convener and to come on gatherings like this. Just want to check, is the pace all right? Yeah. Did everyone hear that? You're going a wee bit fast, darling. Yep. Okay. Yeah, so the two things that I said I wanted to talk about. I feel it's almost like this is the first time I'm giving a talk where I feel I've got something really important I want to say, and it's at the limits of my understanding to be able to say it. But I want to go back to, these basic two principles, if you like, Samyak Drishti, Kalyana Mitrata. So Samyak Drishti, when I think of that, I always go back to 1968 and the Noble Eightfold Path series. It was the first set of lectures that I listened to, and the first lecture, Perfect Vision or Right Understanding, and it feels to me like that's almost like a foundation stone of our order, given in the same year that the order was founded. And Bhante defines Drishti as view, understanding or vision, and Samyak as right or perfect. So he went through a number of sort of ways in which you can express it in English: right view, right understanding, or his preferred term of perfect vision. And then he goes through all the different ways in which it might arise. So he says meditative experience, reflection, but he also talks about it coming in the midst of life, or through loss, bereavement, grief, artistic experience, through dream even, simply through a maturing process even, or through study. And then he goes on to say that the Eightfold Path is divided into these two great stages, the path of vision and the path of transformation. And the job of the Dharma life is to transform all of ourselves up to the level of our highest vision or our deepest vision. And I've always found this an incredibly helpful way of looking at the Dharma life. In that lecture, he mainly talks about perfect vision as this initial flash of understanding when the veils of confusion are kind of lifted. But in other places, he describes it as vision, transformation, and that leads to deepening vision. That leads to more transformation. In other words, the spiral path. So you get this continuous process of transforming yourself, and that leading to other insights, and they in turn help to transform yourself more. And I think for me it's been very helpful to look at this or think of this in terms of focus and breadth, where the focus is the flashes of insight, if you like, and the breadth is the transformation and the context of your life that you're living in. I think the best description of this that I've come across was Subhuti, a couple of talks, 2010 and 11, I think, where he speaks of right view or perfect vision as it's not only a personal thing, but it's us creating a context, a culture, an environment, or an ethos. And he calls it the interpretive framework. And it's like you immerse yourself in a dharmic context and you soak it up, if you like. You soak it up. And that is what helps us to absorb or assimilate the insights that we have. And I think this is why Bhante placed so much emphasis on creating a Sangha, on creating an order. I remember Subhuti even saying that some of the practices that we do, maybe they can feel a bit amateurish even, if that word is a bit amateurish even, in the sense that we're still in the process of developing a dharmic culture in the West, but we have a whole range of practices. You know, we do study together, all the things that we know, friendship and study and ethics and creating a visual culture. I've had many conversations with Aloka about this. Just creating a lifestyle, if you like, having opportunities for people to work together, live together, and that these all have a combined effect to provide the context in which we can have deepening insights. And I think that this is really, really important. I think there's a number of implications from this. One of them, say related, I think, to the direct pointing methodology, is that what this way of looking at the Dharma life implies is that you can have an insight experience. It can be the same experience as any number of other people, but the way that you integrate it, absorb it into your life, will depend upon where you are on the path of transformation. And that will be different. Almost by definition, it will be different for every person. Do you see what I'm saying? It's quite an important point, I think. And I think that is, I mean, for me, this is the genius of Bhante, that he lays out, he obviously insight is absolutely essential. So sometimes when I talk like this, or when others talk like this about the importance of Sangha, it can feel like you are thinking or suggesting that insight is less important, and nothing could be further from the truth. I think that what Bhante's seen is that insight needs a very deep context. And if I had any caution about some of the contemporary insight teachers, I haven't really studied them very deeply. I've read some of the work of Daniel Ingram. I've read the website and the dialogues from the Liberation Unleashed. There definitely seems to be something really good in the methodology that these people and others promote and use, but the context to me sometimes feels a bit shallow. I don't know enough about those communities really to say much more than that, but I feel that that's what Bhante has offered us, is a deep context, and I just want that held as important as the pursuit of insight, if you like. Subhuti, I remember in one of the talks, he did give some illustrative examples, if you like. One of them was, he said, well, we don't have a monopoly on deep meditative experience. We don't have a monopoly on deep meditative experience. Yeah. So you find that in if not all, in most spiritual traditions. But of course, those experiences then are interpreted with whatever the framework of that tradition is. So if you're a Christian mystic, I remember him giving this example, you interpret it according to Christian theology. So, as Buddhists, we want to make sure that we're interpreting it using right view, perfect vision. Another example he gave was from the Tibetan tradition and the Geshe training, the training that Dado Rinpoche, for example, did. And that training can be up to 15 years, maybe longer in some cases. and you only get a meditation practice if you specifically ask for it while you're doing that training. And the reason for that, as Subhuti understood it, is that that tradition wants you to first be established in shunyata, that's the language they use, before you take on meditation practices. Which is quite, I mean, Subhuti said that we probably don't need to go as far as that. But, that was something in there is about right view, if you like. It's the same kind of point. And I also remember him talking about the Brahmajala Sutta, the first sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, of the Digha Nikaya. Thank you, Nirmala. Where he says more than half of the wrong views that are enumerated by the Buddha are misinterpretations of meditation experience. I did go and read it to check that out. But anyway, it's the same point about establishing right view. It needs a context. Anyway, I think that maybe that's enough on that. I hope I've got that point across. I've been trying to articulate this and talk to other people about it for most of the last year, and it's because on the one hand I want to honour the inspiration that many people have found using things like direct pointing, and on the other hand I want to understand the voices of caution that I've been hearing as well, and I think that it's in this area. That I think it's to do with perfect vision, recognising, wanting some recognition that Sangha is really important, and it's important so that insight experiences can be fully absorbed and assimilated. So we need an order. Hopefully that's the conclusion. Which leads quite nicely onto Kalyana Mitrata, which was the second of those two guiding principles. And again, this is an area in which my own understanding has just been, I'm fascinated by Kalyana Mitrata, because it's so easy for me to think I know what it means, friendship with the noble, friendship with the beautiful. And yet, the more experience I have in our community, the more mysterious it becomes to me. We all know the quote, the Buddha to Ananda, friendship is the whole of the spiritual life. It's a bit like the quote in Hamlet, to be or not to be. Most people don't know the rest of the quote. So I thought I would just read out the rest of or some of the other context for that. The Buddha says, by relying upon me as a good friend, Ananda, beings subject to birth are freed from birth. Beings subject to aging are freed from aging. Beings subject to death are freed from death. Beings subject to sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair are freed from sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. By this method, Ananda, it may be understood how the entire holy life is good friendship, good companionship, good comradeship. And I remember in 2008, when Bhante gave a talk on the 6 emphases, when he came to talk about friendship, he just gave the short quote, and then he said, no Buddhist tradition over the last 2,000 years that I'm aware of has taken that statement as seriously as we do, or asked, what did the Buddha mean by that? Of course, you find friendship elsewhere, but I don't believe it has been given the central place we give it. That's quite a bold statement. I mean, he didn't say it in a bold way. He said it in you know, his quite sort of matter-of-fact, down-to-earth way. But, I mean, there's an echo there, isn't there, of, you know, all sorts of developments in Buddhism that came from, you know, the Pali Canon taking a little teaching, if you like. So I do think that's what Bhante's done. He's taken this teaching, he's seen the importance of friendship, and then he's tried to create a Sangha on that principle. And I mean, my own understanding of it, I mean, it's mainly, I mean, apart from actually just trying to practice it, I've been doing these Kalyana Mitra retreats at Padmaloka with Padma Vajra for the last 6 years. And each year my understanding just goes a little bit deeper. I mean, a bit like, you know, talking about perfect vision. I mean, it seems to me what you're trying to do is create a culture. You know, it's not just about having a friendship with a few good people. It's creating a kind of an ethos, or perhaps the best word is an attitude. I think there are two aspects to this that have been very important for me. One is just a kind of an internal one, trying to be, or an inner one perhaps, trying to be as honest with myself as I can, as transparent as I can. Silamani mentioned this yesterday, and express that to others. It's quite a difficult thing to do in a way, and it requires a high level of trust. You know, so that's one thing that we try and do, is create those environments of trust between us. It's something I've last year when I was in India talking to chapter conveners, it was the main thing we talked about, is how to create trust in chapters, but in other order contexts, in which you can then feel free to be open about you know, yourself, your things that you want to disclose or confess. And secondly, the sort of the other aspect, if you like, is having a sense of curiosity about other people. And it's easy to take for granted just how good our order is at that. You know, if you move in other circles, I mean, we don't have a monopoly on friendship, it's true, but we do. There's a lot of care and attention that we give people in our order, amongst each other, but also to, you know, other people in our lives. Not just, I don't just mean sort of mitras and friends either. I mean, the care and attention that people give to their, you know, parents and things like this, I'm often very struck by. Another way of looking at Kalyana Mitrata is to think of it as establishing harmony. Harmony is a very, very beautiful word, and very hard to do well, I think. And having trained in conflict resolution, I've said so many times to people that don't worry about conflict itself. Conflict is natural, it's inevitable, desirable even in human interaction. The trick is how you deal with it, and to try and deal with it in as skillful a way as possible. You know, but disagreement and debate really are so important. I mean, just to go, I went back last week, I went back again to one of Bhante's early lectures, 1966, this one, The Spiritual Community. And Bhante says, well, it might be quite clear why you have the Buddha and the Dharma, but why do we have a Sangha?